Hey everybody, welcome back to DC Football 101. We are on episode 6 already, which is crazy that I've done 6 of these already. And sadly, we're doing this because Washington Commanders star wide receiver, been there for a long time, Terry McLaurin, has asked for a trade in the midst of contract negotiations. Now, let's set the record straight here a little bit. There are some things to consider when looking at this contract negotiation. Just number one and foremost, I want Washington Commanders not to freak out that this trade request does not mean that he's gone automatically. In the NFL, not so much in the if this is not the NBA. Players that request to get traded do not always get traded, and that is okay. This is a contract negotiation. This is part of the course. Debo asked for trade. Brandon Ayuk, Trey Hendrickson, all guys that asked for trade have not been traded. I do not think this is something that Washington Commanders fans have to worry about. And according to Adam Schefter's report, the Commanders are not interested in trading for him. Some teams have inquired, but at this point, the Commanders are not interested in making a trade for McLaurin. So this is just part of the course. It's not fun part of the course as a Washington Commanders fan myself. This is not fun. I don't want to deal with this, but it is what it is at this point. And as fans, we just have to wait through it. Now, this is not good for team morale, to be clear. This is not good for team morale. Nobody wants to deal with a contract, but this is the first real non-rainbow sunshine thing that Adam Peters has had to deal with. And look, if you look back at it, Adam Peters comes from really disciplined front offices. You talk about the New England Patriots when Bill Belichick was there. You talk about the Denver Broncos, John Elway. You talk about the 49ers, who have been infamous for their contract holdouts. This is not surprising to me at all, in the least bit, in terms of him, holding out. According to Adam Schefter, with both sides far apart, McLaurin held out for the first 4 days before reporting to camp. They're still far apart. They're still very far apart. And it's clear that it's... How do I say this? This is going to get worse before it gets better. Now, like I said, players do not usually get traded when having a trade request when it comes to contract negotiation. I believe I saw somewhere, and it might have been Adam Schefter, but the last 3 or 4 wide receivers that have requested a trade have not been traded within that time, that same season. It doesn't mean that they don't get traded eventually, but there's that to consider as well. There's also another thing to consider here. Terry McLaurin's 30 years old, guys. He's not a young pup. He's not DK Metcalf. Metcalf got drafted the same year, but is 3 years younger. And for being 30 as a wide receiver, that basically means you're at the end of your prime. Now, there are wide receivers that do get paid around $30 million a year. That's Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, guys who will most likely be in the Hall of Fame eventually, right? So those are things to consider as well. Now, I will say this. If this goes so bad, and I don't want this to go bad. I really don't. But if this does go as bad as we think it could possibly go, I don't think it will, and he actually does get traded, or the Commanders start entertaining trade calls. At this point, let's be clear, they are not, according to reporting by everybody, Adam Schefter and everybody else, the Commanders are not interested in trading Terry McLaurin. But if they did get to the point where they were, let's say this goes through all of preseason and training camp, and we're right before week 1, and this isn't happening, right? So what do those trades look like? I don't know. We'll see, but there are some options here. So let's look at the potential teams that might be willing to trade for Terry McLaurin, or who should trade for Terry McLaurin, and what those trade packages could potentially look like, right? So I think there are a few options here, and I want to talk about them real quick. So there are a few options here that I want to go over. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to go by division here, no particular order. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills do not have a veteran solidified number 1 wideout, right? They don't have that. Terry McLaurin could be that. Now, I don't know salary cap situation. But in any trade for Terry has to start at least with like a second or third round pick, right? At least one of those two. I think that's where you're at with Terry McLaurin. Now, do you get other players? Do you get more picks than just that second or third rounder? I'm not Adam Peters. I'm not trying to be a GM, but I think that's where you start out. But I think the Buffalo Bills are the first team that I'm looking at here that could potentially use Terry. They're already a championship contender. They need an alpha dog in that wide receiver room, and I think Terry can fill that role. Another team in the AFC East that we should keep an eye on is the New England Patriots. Look, they tried to they've added some weapons around Drake May, another promising quarterback from that draft that Jaden Daniels was in. He needs more weapons. They got Stephon Diggs, but honestly, I'm not too high on Stephon Diggs. Didn't have the greatest of years last year and had some questionable decisions off the field this offseason, so who knows what happens with him. Outside of that, maybe the Tennessee Titans call. They have a rookie quarterback who could use some extra help. I don't necessarily trust Calvin Ridley to be your number one out there. If you still believe in Trevor Lawrence, maybe you go for Terry. If you're Jacksonville Jaguars, maybe Las Vegas Raiders, go for it. They don't have look, I like Jacoby Myers, but Terry McLaurin's better, right? Jacoby would be a great number two. There might even be a team in the division here that could use a wide out, like Mal from our last episode 103 last night, talking about training camp review. Mal was talking about how with the injury to Bryce Ford Wheaton, maybe the wide receiver room in New York is a little thin. Now, I don't think the Commanders make that trade unless like Malik Neighbors is on the table. And let's be clear, Malik Neighbors is not going to be on the table there, so probably not going to trade in division. Adam Peters made it clear that there's an in-division tax on any trades, so that's probably not going to happen. But one other team that I would like to point out here, and I think this might be the most fascinating team, if a Terry McLaurin trade does happen yet again, I am not pushing for that. I don't want that to happen. I want the contracts to be resolved, is the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason why I say that is, and if you followed the Commanders or 49ers last offseason, they had a contract dispute of their own with Brandon Ayuk, who is the former college teammate of our franchise quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Now, I don't know if some type of swap would happen. Maybe even the Commanders would have to incentivize that, but maybe not, because Ayuk has not been healthy since getting that contract extension. But that might be something for the Adam Peters and Commanders to chew on. I'm not saying that they should or they would, but I'm saying if you get to the point where you're actually considering to trade Terry McLaurin, I think you call San Francisco. Honestly, that might be my first call. But that's just me. I'm just a podcaster here who is a Commanders fan talking football. And at the end of the day, nobody wants to trade Terry McLaurin. If he stays here for his whole career, wins more playoff games, even wins the championship, he's going to get his jersey retired. It's part of the course with contract negotiations, and it's fun to theorize where he could possibly land. And those are just my thoughts. Right now, we're in a holding pattern. Terry requested the trade. It is part of the course when it comes to contract negotiations when parties are far apart. I expect this to get even more uglier before it gets better, but it should get better eventually. Who knows how long this contract negotiation holds out, but it is not getting fun for Commanders fans. And Commanders fans, take a deep breath. The Commanders are not at this time looking to trade Terry McLaurin, according to all reports. So take a deep breath. It's okay. And I just want to say thanks again for people that joined us for this episode of DC Football 101, presented by 14 Rings and NFC East podcast. I'll be talking more about this next Tuesday on 14 Rings, our episode 104, when we talk about, the Hall of Fame game, which is actually going on right now out while I'm recording, but any other NFC East news, not just Commanders news. Until next time, deuces.